We're holding Sefer Mishlei Perek Lamed, second half of chapter 30, Pasuk Yud-Chet. There's one chapter left after this in Sefer Mishlei, the famous chapter of Eshet Hayil Mi Yimtza, which is very unique and different. So this, in some ways, is the last chapter where he talks a little bit about his observations of the world, some of the inequities, some of the most amazing things that he's observed, some of the things that he does not understand, some of the things that we need to watch out for. Shelosha hemma nifleu mimeni ve'arba'a lo yida'atim. There are three things that are concealed from me, and four that I do not know. He lists what these three or four things really are. It's one after another. But before we go into what they are, what does it mean that they are concealed from me? He's going to give some examples of certain things that appear to conceal themselves, but he's also talking about certain things that he doesn't understand. Ta'amei mitzvot. There are certain mitzvot that are really difficult to understand. We're not even talking about hukim. There are hukim, there are mitzvot that do not make too much sense, they're not logical, they definitely have a reason. But here he means to say that there are some things that appear to be contradictory or simply puzzling. And he compares it to the following. Derech hanesher b'shamayim, derech nachash al etzur, derech oniya belev yam, v'derech gever be'alma. The way of the eagle in the heavens, the way of a serpent on the rock, the way of a ship in the heart of the sea, and the way of a man with a young woman. What do these all have in common? That after the nesher has traveled in the shamayim, after the eagle has traveled in the shamayim, could you tell that it went through? You could not tell it that it went through. The same thing with a serpent, al-etzur, going through on a rock. Could you tell there was a nachash there before? No. But it went there, it traveled through. Or derech oniya belev yam, or a ship going through the ocean. If you wouldn't be there at the time and see the waves, could you ever, are there any tracks that the ship left behind? There are no tracks, and the same is true with a man and a woman. Unless she becomes pregnant, the woman, there's no way telling that the man was together with a woman. In other words, what all these have in common is that they can be concealed. In the same way that they can be concealed, there are certain things that are concealed that I do not understand. The last one, the derech gever be'alma, he's going to elaborate a little bit more on. The fact that a man can be with a woman and it could not be known, unfortunately could lead to sin. It could lead to znut. Because the woman can easily cover it up. As he says in the following pasuk, Ken derech isha mena'efet, achla u'machata piya ve'amra lo pa'alti aven. In the same way, so is an adulterous woman. She eats and wipes her mouth, and she says, I have committed no sin. Who can prove it? It's difficult to prove. So therefore, because some of these things can be concealed, when it comes to gever be'alma, that could lead to sin. That is why there is problems with yihud, men and women being in the same room, locked, without anybody being able to enter the room. It could be an issue of yihud. There are certain halachot as to how one can be with another individual in the same room, depending on the circumstances, how many men, how many women, if it's a relative or not, and so forth. Because it could easily come to sin. I'm going to give you a couple examples that the Mefarshim say that Shlomo Melech had some questions about. He was puzzled as to what the reasoning is of the mitzvot. One of them is Yibum, and one of them is a divorcee, a woman who's a divorcee. Yibum means very unique and special mitzvah that if a man dies without leaving behind children, so his wife has now the opportunity to marry the man's brother, if the two agree, and if a child is born, that child will, according to the Kabbalah, have the neshama of the deceased husband, and he will be like the continuation, the name will be given to him. That's a very special mitzvah called mitzvah yibum, which today is very rare. By Ashkenazim it's not common at all. But by the Sephardim it was still done up until recently. That if the two agreed, of course, assuming that the other man was not married, the brother was not married, because if he was married, there would be a problem of having more than one wife, depending on his tradition or not, if it was possible or not. But that would be a beautiful mitzvah of this woman marrying her brother-in-law. Now, ordinarily, if the man would have left behind children, and he died or got divorced, his wife cannot marry his brother, his ex-wife. The widow would not be able to marry her brother-in-law. A woman cannot marry her brother-in-law. Whereas a man can marry his sister-in-law if his wife passed away. Only if his wife passed away could he marry his sister-in-law. If his wife, his ex-wife, whatever, is still alive, then he cannot marry his sister-in-law either. His wife's sister. So here, what's strange is that wouldn't it make more sense if there were kids already, that this woman would marry the brother, the uncle would be with his nephews? That's what logic would say. Why not? What's wrong with marrying her brother-in-law? No, the Torah says only if the man had no children. Then if there is yibum, then they get married. If there's no yibum, there has to be halitza, which is a procedure before this woman can marry anybody else. There has to be something called halitza, which is really a release, that the brother-in-law releases her to be able to get married to anyone else. So if they don't agree to get married, they need to go through halitza. So here we have a situation where only one way can she marry her brother-in-law, the other way she cannot, if there are boys, if there are kids. Yes?
I think that there's a release, meaning that the brother-in-law would have to approve.
If he does not want her, if he does not want to make yibum, or she does not want him as a husband, before she can get married to someone else, she has to get a release from him called a halitza.
He doesn't have to force her to marry.
No, they both have to agree. And if he doesn't want it, if there's a second or third brother who wants it, they can do the yibum too. We first ask the older one, do you want to do yibum? Does she want to do yibum? If they both agree, then we have yibum. But if there were children, then there would be no yibum. She would not be allowed to, even if she wants to, she would not be able to marry her brother-in-law. So this is a question that he may have had, It's interesting, why is it so? But Hashem knows why. The other situation is also very interesting. A woman who got divorced from her husband and married another man, and later on she regrets it. And so did her ex-husband. They regretted it. She's not allowed to go back to her original husband, her first husband. Once she married the second man, that's it. It's like they say in English, they burn the bridges. They can't get back together. Yes? No, only for the woman. It's a good. What you ask is a good question. If the man got divorced from his wife, he went on to marry another woman, he didn't like her, or something happened, whatever. Now he wants to go back to his first wife. It's perfectly fine as long as his first wife agrees, and that has happened. It does happen from time to time. But the other way around, the Torah says no, and we've spoken about it when we gave a series here of Ta'amei Mitzvot. I suggested an explanation of why the Torah says if for a woman it's not possible for her to go back. Otherwise, if it would be possible, people who are not very modest would get divorced just for the night. You know why? After all, in this country they share partners, right? If that would be possible, that she would be able to go back, people would be doing that. And it's very sensitive for a woman who's the carrier of the child. We have to know where the child, from which man the child is from. She cannot just, go back and forth. It's a very delicate situation. So that is why, once she gets married to somebody else, Kabbalistically too, the lines are severed. She cannot go back to her first husband. No connection can be made anymore. However, if this woman, after she got divorced, did not get married to another man, but she became an adulteress, right? She was living with several people, 1, 2, 3, 4, over the next couple of years. She wanted, to try it out. Of course, it's a sur. Even though she's not married, it's still a sur, because there's no kedusha, there's no chupah, it's a sur. But anyway, she did it anyway. And she did it with many men. If she eventually wants to go back and remarry her first husband, she can. Why? Because she was never married, in quotes, married to another man. Once she gets married to another man, only then did the Torah say you can't go back. But if she was doing forbidden things with other men, and now she became a Balat Teshuvah, or wants to go back to her husband, and her husband of course accepts her, then fine. It's actually a mitzvah to bring them back together. So, why? Why is it a mitzvah? The Torah very much wants the original couple, who were probably meant for each other, who may even have kids together, to have a stable home. As long as, of course, they're okay with each other. If the two hate each other, then they shouldn't be living together. But if it was for something silly that they got divorced, and most divorces are for silly things, then an attempt should be made after, of course, they've worked on their personality and their character, and bring them back together, if at all possible. The only one who we cannot really help is a Kohen. Once a Kohen divorces his wife, he can't go back to her, even if they two cry and they want each other and they regret it and they feel terrible. It's too late. That's why whenever a Kohen comes to get a divorce, we delay it. We give him a hard time. We push it off because they have a temper and they may change their minds tomorrow. So if you give him the get now while he has a temper, comes tomorrow he can't change his mind. So we say, maybe he'll cool off over the weekend. So we give him some time to think about it. With Kohanim, we don't try to rush the get. So you see, I just gave you two examples of mitzvot that, what's the reasoning behind it? Who knows? So Shlomo Melech says they're concealed from me. With the situation with the woman covering up, concealing what she did, Shlomo Melech is also telling us that it's sad that people do not pay attention. Shalom mitbonenim, that just because something can be concealed, it doesn't mean that Hashem does not see. A person who does something in a concealed way, he's truly lacking Yirat Shamayim. Most people do not do averot, sins, because they are embarrassed. They don't want people to know what they did. The true indicator if somebody is a God-fearing person is if privately, when no one is there, when no one is aware, he behaves in a proper way. So, in this situation where a sin can be committed between a man and a woman, it is the ultimate test of Yirat Shamayim, where nobody would ever find out, but obviously Hashem does know. And one, of course, who goes ahead nevertheless, he has a complete lack of Yirat Shamayim. Nobody may know, nobody may find out about it.
Hashem is going to reveal it in a way.
He may, of course, he may reveal it. Next pasuk. Tachat shalosh ragza eretz v'tachat arba lo tuchal se'et. Once again, he mentions 3 and 4. Under 3 things the earth quakes, and under 4 it cannot endure. He's about to list for us some situations which are hard to understand why they happen, and that people are very upset when they happen. One of them is tachat eved ki yimloch v'naval ki yizba lachem. Under a slave who rules and a wretch who is sated with food. Let me explain a little bit what this means. I started off the shiur tonight by telling you that Shlomo Melech is going to point out to some inequities, some things that are not fair in life, some things that don't make sense, that he's puzzled about, that people are upset about. And this is one of them. How could it be, and how could it ever come, that an Eved Yimloch, one who was a slave, just yesterday he was a slave, he was a nothing, and the next day he's already a ruler, he's a mayor. Right? How could this be? And people are upset. Why does he get to this position? How did he make it to the top? He doesn't, and it's not a good idea for him to rule to begin with, because he doesn't know. He's not accustomed to it. He's accustomed to be a slave, a servant, not a ruler over others. He won't know, and he won't be able to do a good job. Or the other one, Naval ki yizba lachem. Naval is a wretched person, a person who's very low. One of these homeless people, that he should be having a good life, it doesn't make sense. This type of person should be the one that's going around asking for alms, begging people for tzedakah. But if you see this man having a good life, sated with food, and one who is smart and good looking and kind perhaps, suffering, struggling, you may wonder, where's the fairness involved? So people are upset that these things happen. And why do they happen? only because of the ma'asim of people, because of their deeds. When things appear to not go right, when things appear not fair, it's perhaps the people themselves have done something wrong. The example is during the times during the period in history of the Hashmonaim. At first the Hashmonaim demonstrated strength, misirut nefesh, but in the end, all their limited authority and success disappeared. When what happened? When their avadim, when their slaves and servants took over, they took power, the slaves, and they killed them almost all off. Hordos, the famous Hordos, came out from that. Hashmonaim, during the story of Hanukkah, right? Hordos came out of that. We're talking about slaves, people who were down there. Who's another example? Haman. Haman, who was a nothing, and he became Haman HaTzored. He gave us trouble. Second to the king. Another example, the Greek Empire. The Greek Empire, you know who started the Greek Empire? Alexander's father. It just started and they became a big empire. And who was Alexander according to one tradition? His mother was not liked by his father, by the real husband. His mother was not liked by her real husband. She was a senua. And somehow she became pregnant from another man. So here's Alexander, who was not even a miyuchas, as we say in Hebrew. He was from another man. His mother committed an adulterous act, and he became a powerful king. Somebody who, nobody knew who he was. So these are examples, a few examples of things that do not make sense and that make people upset, but this has to do, Shlomo Melech is basically telling us that this happens because of the ma'asim of people, because of the deeds of the generation or of the community. All sorts of strange things happen because of that. Another example of something that does not sometimes make sense, but it happens, is Tachat Senu'ah Kitiba'el B'Shivcha Kitirash Givirta. Under a hated woman who is married and a maidservant who inherits her mistress. You have a hated woman, nobody likes her, either because of her deeds or because of her looks, but she ends up getting married at 19 years old, where nobody would think she would ever make a shidduch. She's senua, she's hated, either because of her ma'asim, because of her deeds, because she was a mena'efet, an adulteress, or because she's just not good looking. Nevertheless, she ends up getting the job, a top-paying job in some company, or she gets married. Either or, the message is the same. How could it be that she gets the job, that she gets the position, that she gets married, and not the other person who deserves it more, who's more fitting for the job? But it happens. And the other one was also strange. Could it ever happen that the maidservant will inherit her boss, the mistress? Yes. The mistress, the boss, she was on top one day, somehow she lost everything, and the maidservant inherited everything. That could happen too. Strange things can happen, that's what he's saying. This all has to do with the deeds of the community, of the people. So far, Shlomo Melech has given us examples that are strange, that do not make too much sense, that people are upset. And now he's going to give us examples that we can learn from. Arba'ahim Ktanei Aretz, Vehem Chachamim Mechukamim. The following four are small creatures on earth, yet they are exceedingly wise. Chachamim. There's something to learn from them, and whoever adapts, huh? Adapts, right. Adopt is from adoption, right. Adapts, okay. And whoever adapts their ma'asim, their characteristics, he is contributing lekiyum ha'olam. The commentators tell us that whoever adapts these characteristics from these creatures, he really contributes, he really is doing something constructive. And which ones are these creatures? It begins with the nemalim. HaNemalim am lo'az vayachinu b'kaitz lachmam. The ants are people not strong, yet they prepare their food in summer. He's talking about the weakness of simple ants being weak. What can they accomplish? They're weak, well, they're small, but they accomplish a lot in preparing during the summer when there's harvest, the food that they will need in the winter. What is that? So anyway, even though they don't have that much strength, what do we see from that? They work hard. And that's what people should do. They should work hard, not be lazy. Look at the ant. They're not so strong, and look how much they accomplish. Look how smart they are. Look how they think in advance. And don't think for a moment that they are programmed from above to do that. You know, some people think that the animals are programmed by instinct. It's not such a thing as being programmed. You know, they have a certain degree of intelligence. They have a certain instinct, a certain understanding that that's what they need to do. That's the Nemalim. The next example is Shefanim. Shefanim am lo atzum vayasimu basela betam. Here he translates it, the Hyrax says. Shefanim are all these little animals, whether it's the Hyrax, whether it's the Connie, the badger family, but the small ones. Today we call Shafan the rabbit, but it's not necessarily the rabbit. So these Shefanim, they're not that many. Vayasimu basela betam, and they make their home in the rock. How do they make their home in the rock? They dig, little by little, until the crevice becomes a big hole, until they can make that into their home. That means, what are they willing to do? There are not that many of them, but they're willing to work hard, slowly, little by little, until they accomplish their goal. So the commentators tell us that's the way it should be in Avodat Hashem, in the service of Hashem, in the study of Torah. It's not easy. It cannot be done overnight. A person cannot become a true Baal Teshuvah overnight either. It takes time, but do it little by little. This is something to learn from the Shefanim. They're not that many. That means that they don't have that much power. Their numbers are small. Look what they accomplish over time. From a rock, they can make their home because they go at it little by little. The next one that is smart and that is something to admire. The next creature is the Arbe, the locust. Melech en la arbe, vayetze chotzetz kulo. The locusts have no king, yet they all go out in a troop. They don't have a king calling them together, yet there is an incredible ahdut, unity. They all think about the same thing. We're going to get that field. We're going to eat it all up. We're going to all come down together at the same time. Somehow, it's incredible. I mean, we're talking about millions, not thousands, millions of locusts. If you've ever seen them, it's an incredible amount. How they all think of the same thing at the same time. They all agree to go together. They don't split. So here what's obvious is the point of ahdut. No machloket. The importance of being together, how much can be accomplished if people are together, if they work together, if their minds are together, whether it's two friends, husband and wife, two partners, whatever. The ahdut is something very, very powerful. Learn from the arbe. They don't have a king, and look what they can accomplish by thinking alike. The last one is a very interesting creature. The last one is the semamit. Anybody know what creature that is? The semamit? You don't hear it too often today. Today in Hebrew they call it akavish, the spider. Semamit biyadayim tetapes v'hi bechle melech. The spider grasps with her hands and she's in the king's palaces. Now there are two points over here. Look what she accomplishes with her own bare hands. She's all by herself. There's no locust, there's no shefanim, there's no nemalim. She's all on her own, and she spins a web, and she catches her own food. Yegia kapecha. She doesn't have to steal. She doesn't have to go. Well, I guess she ambushes, but right. But she works hard at it. She lays out her net. Look what she does. What she accomplishes with her bare hands. Semamit beyadayim tetapes. No, look where she crawls. Look where she goes. And where does she end up? She ends up in all places, even v'hi bechle melech, even the palaces of the kings. She's everywhere. Something to admire with her bare hands. Yeah. What do we learn from her? Yegia kapecha. How a person should work with his hand, not depend on others. How much he can accomplish on his own if he really wanted to. This little spider, look where it ends up. It ends up in the palaces of kings. And the commentaries tell us that Am Yisrael is compared in some ways to the semamit. How? Nobody likes spiders, and nobody likes the Jews. But just like nobody likes spiders, and they end up being even in the palace of the king, even in the White House, I'm sure they'll find some spiders once in a while. Just like nobody likes them, and they end up in the highest places. Same thing with Am Yisrael. Even though nobody likes the Jews, they're still always the advisors. They're always in the palaces of the kings. Even the Shah had, I'm sure, Jewish friends, Jewish advisors, right? Hassan Melech Morocco, also the king of Morocco, he understood that the king of Turkey, Spain, Portugal, they always had the Jewish advisors. So they don't like them, but they're always in the palaces of the king. All right, we just have a couple more. Shelosha hema metivei tzad ve'arba'a metivei lachet. The following 3 or 4 are outstanding in their step, and 4 are outstanding in their walk. It's more or less a repetition. You have a group here who do an excellent job in the way they walk, in the way they run. Laish gibor b'behema. Laish is a lion. The lion is the mightiest of the beasts. Velo yashuv mipnei kol. He is undaunted by anyone. What that really means in simple English, he's not afraid. He doesn't have concerns. You know, when a giraffe goes to drink some water, it bends down in such a way that it has to be ready to run in case an animal, prey, attacks her. You know, there are certain animals that have to be concerned of somebody bigger than them or whatever. A lion doesn't have any of such concerns. He doesn't look around. He just goes where he needs to go. Zarzir motnaim otaish umelech alkum imo. Zarzir motnaim, some say that it's the greyhound. Not the bus greyhound, but there are some dogs that are very fast. Some of these dogs are used by hunters to go catch a bird, an animal, or to pick it up. That's a zarzir. According to some commentators, we talk about a fast animal, a fast dog. Others say that a zarzir is a certain kind of bird, like the falcon, that hunters would also use to catch something, because it's a fast bird. Either way, there's speed to this bird. And then you have the taish, the he-goat, that he's always going ahead. He's not going in the back. Even though there's a herd, the he-goat goes in the front, goes ahead. And then you have Melech al-Kum Imo, the king against whom no one dares to rise up, because he's a powerful king, he's a strong king, he's a confident king. Why does he list these 4? Again, these are 4 that we can learn something from them. When it comes to the service of Hashem, is not to be afraid, not to be undaunted, not to be concerned what people say, to go up in the front, not to be the last, and to be like a king who is determined to do what he needs to do without any fears, because he's confident of what he's doing. There are some Jews who are not proud that they are Jewish. They are afraid. They are embarrassed. They take off their kippah, or they do certain things because they're not really comfortable with their identity of who they are. They feel sorry for their enemy, for the Palestinians, that they were robbed of their land. Well, what about your culture, your tradition, your religion? These who are strong, who are not concerned, who have no fears, who walk, in the front. And according to the commentaries, he's also giving us a remes to what the rabbis tell us in Pirkei Avot. Remember the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, Have'az kanamer, kal kanesher, ratz katzvi, right? Be as courageous or strong as a lion, swift as an eagle, and fast as a deer. Ve'az kanamer, in other words, as ferocious as a gibor kari, and az kanamer means strong like a lion, but ferocious like a leopard. All of these for what? Lasot retzon avicha shebashamayim. You may get up very early to catch a flight. You may rush to make some money, right? You may be very strong to not give up something. You have a good deal. You don't want to give it up. So you may show signs of strength, and you don't tire, and you're not lazy. So when it comes to Retzon Avicha Shebashamayim, to do a mitzvah, to get up in the morning to go to tefillah, to a minyan, to a shiur Torah, show the same strength. You spend so much money on imported Italian furniture, spend at least as much on tzedakah, right? In other words, you have to show the same strength and the same effort in Lasot Retzon Avicha Shebashamayim. And these are the ones that you should learn from. The lion, who's strong, who is not concerned. according to the Kabbalah, these four that are mentioned over here, the lion, I think the eagle, actually they're not all mentioned here, but according to the Kabbalah, there are basically four types of individuals. One who comes from the side of the lion, one that comes from the side of the eagle, one that comes from the side of the bull, and one that comes from the side of Adam, of the human being. And people have different characteristics, not only astrologically, but depending on where the neshama comes from which sitra, from which side. No, distinctive neshama. Yeah. And the one that comes from the side of Adam is usually the one who has more power, or the one who is more dominant and controls the rest of them. But anyway, that's a whole different topic. What the different neshamot that people have. All right, we have a couple more pesukim and we're done with the perek. Im navalta veitnase vimzamota yad lepe. He translates it here, if you have been put to shame, you will be in your ascendancy. And if you thought evil, put your hand to your mouth. In simple English, if you have been put to shame, don't worry about it. In the end, vitnase, you will come out on top. One has to be very careful that if he's put to shame, if somebody angers him, that he doesn't respond back, that he doesn't take revenge, that he doesn't yell back, because then all the embarrassment is a kapara. All that he's gone through will elevate him. He will in the end be vitnase, in his ascendancy. That's one interpretation. But the other interpretation is as follows. If you have been put to shame, vitnase, don't lose yourself. Don't lose your composure. Be on top. Remain on top. Don't allow the fact that somebody put you to shame to lower you, to feel any worse, to feel belittled. You stay where you are. Ignore. Be indifferent as much as possible. That's another interpretation. Another idea in the words in navalta bitnase is that if you've shamed yourself in Torah by asking questions, by asking all your doubts that you have, and one who has doubts and questions, he needs to ask a rabbi. A lot of people, have many questions, but the problem is they don't ask. They have trouble with the Holocaust. Why did God allow something like this to happen? Well, why don't you go ask and sit down with somebody that will give you an answer, an explanation for it? It's not good, it's not healthy to just remain with the question. You have some doubts and questions and you need to ask them. And when it comes to halakha, it's even more important. Lo baishan lomed, the rabbis tell us. One who's shy, one who's bashful, will not easily learn because he won't raise his hand in class. Teacher, I have a question. So, if you've shamed yourself to ask questions, to clarify the doubts that you may have, bitnaseh, something good will come out of it, because of course you will have all the answers to your questions. You've gained something from it. But if you did the opposite, vimzamota yad lapeh, if you close your mouth, here, in other words, if we're talking about questions, in the end you won't have the answers. If somebody asks you, what will you tell them? So the correct thing to do is to ask if you have any doubts. The last pasuk of the perek, ki mitz chalav yotzi chem'ah, umitz af yotzi dam, umitz apayim yotzi riv. This one is a funny one. For pressing milk, you will get out butter. You know how you make butter? By this, pressing it hard, shaking it, right? You get butter. If you press the nose, what do you get? Blood. And if you press anger, it will give out strife. And of course, he's talking about anger over here. That's how he ends the perek. In other words, if you press anger, if you insist on being right, if you're always arguing, in the end, what will come out of all this anger? Riv. Only fights and arguments. And people do not realize it, that even though it's okay once in a while to have a discussion, not an argument, you have to be careful from arguing too much, because if it's a husband and wife, you will lose feelings for each other. After a while, after 10 years, the two will come to a marriage counselor and he won't be able to help them. They don't really care for each other anymore. You have to be careful not to argue too much. Sometimes it's just better to listen to the other person and not answer. Even though I've tried it and it doesn't work, because my wife asked me, why don't you say something? But sometimes it's just better, no comment. I take the Fifth Amendment. Isn't that what it's for? Right? I have the right. Sometimes it's just healthier. But he says that's exactly the consequences of mitzapayim, of anger. Person who's temperamental, he will have, unfortunately, many opportunities to be angry, and many arguments will arise. That is one idea that is expressed over here. Another idea is the rabbis tell us, this is relating to the pasuk before, a person should do whatever he can to give his life for Torah and not be concerned about his kavod. Even though he may go through embarrassment, even though he may go through a lot of trouble, when it comes to Torah, a person should give his utmost and not be concerned as to what people will say. This is a very important point when it comes to those who are considering doing teshuvah, not just learning Torah. They're concerned what people will say. They might be embarrassed by them. People might look down at them, people that used to respect them. What will they say when I come to work the next day with the kippah? My family will make fun of me. And this happens especially in the families where the parents or the uncles are not religious at all. And I've heard this a lot from in the Persian community, where one individual in the family is very religious, and everybody else is not so religious. Okay, we can get along. No, they have to say something. They have to make fun. They have to ridicule, especially if the one who's religious, does not want to travel in a car on Shabbat to their home, to eat in their home. I can't make it, it's too far, I can't walk. How do you please them? And because you can't please them, they make fun of you. You have to be very, very strong and smart. Smart that perhaps think of a way that they should come to you. Or find some way to explain to them that you very much love their food. And you very much would like to eat with them, but Shabbat comes first, in a diplomatic and a tactful way. When one is willing to give of himself to Torah, when one wants to lead a true Jewish life, he has to be prepared for Mesirut Nefesh, of self-sacrifice, being embarrassed, being looked down at. So what? In the end, whoever is strong, he's the one that will win, not them. Other idea that he's emphasizing over here is that in the same way, from mitz halav, what comes out of the milk is butter. Mitz halav yotzi hama. In the same way that pressing the nose comes out blood, what you see from this is that you can get something good and something bad. From what? From diburim. When it comes to speech, speech can be good and speech can be bad. In the same way that you press milk, you get something good, you get something called butter. But if you press the nose, you get blood. In the same way, when it comes to speech, be careful. You may have to sometimes put your hand on your mouth and hold yourself back, because that mouth is very powerful. Either something good can come out of it, or something bad can come out of it. And he chooses, apparently, to end this perek with this very important point, which he said it before, in different words. Ki hamavet v'hayim biyad halashon. Life and death are in the hand of the tongue. A person can destroy himself, can destroy the lives of others by misusing his tongue. And a person, of course, can accomplish a lot by saying something positive, saying something good, by praying. The mouth is very, very special. That is one of the most important differences between us and animals, that we have the power of speech, and we have to be prepared to use it in a good way, in a positive way. Okay, so B'ezrat Hashem, next week I'm still thinking perhaps to do something special for Tisha B'Av maybe, because all we have is about 2 weeks left of Mishlei. And then we'll be starting something new, so I'll decide the next couple of days if we'll have something in between, and B'ezrat Hashem will continue after that with the last perek of Mishlei.